Hey folks, welcome to the third hour of American Agenda. I'm Bob Sellers.
And I'm Heather Childers, and we're now joined by our family of co-hosts, Republican strategist and host of the Andrea Kaye Show, Andrea Kaye, former Florida Congressman and Director for American Center for Political Leadership, Dennis Ross, and co-chair of Project 21 and host of Stacy on the Right, Stacy Washington. Welcome to everyone.
All right, today is Earth Day. President Biden hosting a two-day virtual global summit on climate with 40 other world leaders, including Russia's Vladimir Putin, China's Xi, to address what Biden calls a global climate crisis. Mr. Biden has said he wants to cut greenhouse gases by 50% by the end of this decade. The cost, though, very pricey to a lot of folks. The White House recently unveiled an infrastructure and climate plan that they estimate will cost $2 trillion. And by the way, I know that the Republicans had proposed something that was quite a bit less than that. So Dennis Ross, let me start with you. Your thoughts on what's developing here?
Well, it's kind of interesting because we have some of the best regulations in the world when it comes to energy emissions. And the fact that the Paris Accords no longer have the United States, and now they're putting us back into it. But you ask the countries that are members of the Paris Accord, how many of them are meeting their standards? Not even France is meeting their standards. This is political theater. Look, I am all for alternative energy sources. There's no question about it. But you cannot deny that this country is dependent, this world is dependent on fossil fuels. And if we're going to transition to alternative sources, that should be a market-based transition, not a mandated base by government. It's political theater.
Yeah. Stacy, you agree?
I do, and this is an attack on the natural oil and gas industry, the workers who've already been hit hard by this administration when they had those executive orders ending the Keystone XL pipeline and ending all of those jobs and drilling on federal land. So this is yet another attempt to force Americans into a green energy posture that we're already leading on. We had the best year ever in 2019, cutting greenhouse gas emissions and exporting green energy. So we're doing the most and actually getting the least benefit out of rejoining the Paris Accords. And you can see that by these decisions and announcements that are being made.
Heather, it strikes me that, like Dennis was saying, there is private enterprise interest in alternative energy. Car companies are going that way already. I haven't bought one yet, but next time I buy a car, it might be an electric vehicle.
Really?
And I think a lot of people may be going that route. Well, I think it makes a lot of sense. I have no problem. I just don't want the government to force me to do that.
Exactly. That's your choice. And then another question that I had is this part of the $2 trillion infrastructure plan that you did mention, Bob? Because out of that plan, millions and billions of dollars was being spent on green energy. If you recall, some of the wacky things.
Even though they're not saying it is, but it's an alternate establishment of what is infrastructure.
Right. Yeah. Infrastructure including $213 billion to retrofit 2 million houses and buildings, $175 billion in subsidies for electric vehicles, $20 billion to advance racial equity and environmental justice. All of that was in the $2 trillion infrastructure plan.
Yeah. Andrea, your thoughts?
Well, my head is kind of spinning, right? Because what's in that infrastructure bill versus the jobs bill? And then they said that everything was infrastructure, right? So it's hard to know where the big spending ends and the next big spending bill begins. Look, and I think that we lose when we allow ourselves to get down into the weeds. No offense to my fellow guests who are brilliant. I think we lose when we get down into the weeds of arguing over how we're doing on climate change and emissions, because none of this is really about climate change, right? They're trying to drag race into it, but that's not what this is about. This is about destroying our capitalist system so that they can usher in their Marxist utopia. That's why her original green energy deal had things like universal income and LGBTQ equity. This is what it's always about. The Democrats trying to seize on every policy to usher in their Marxist economic schemes.
Yeah, and Heather, we had seen if China doesn't go along with everything, we even have John Kerry saying if they stopped emissions today, we still have a problem. It's like I've gotten both my vaccines. I have to keep wearing a mask. I mean, what's the point if there's a problem that isn't addressed by what they're proposing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I think that goes to what they're actually calling the Green New Deal today. When they were talking about it, the president called it equity, inclusion, and net zero. So as Andrea was just saying, the ultimate goal is not just climate change and green energy, obviously, just from what they're saying. You know, trust what someone is saying to you, because that's what the agenda is here.
Yeah. And Dennis, you're a financial guy. Talk about the amount of money we're talking about here, $2 trillion.
First of all, we don't have the money. We don't have
exactly.
the money, Bob. That's just it. And you know, when I was in Congress, we did the unthinkable too. We ran on it. We ran on debt and deficit and how we were going to reduce it, and then we got in control and we let it get out of control again. And now we don't even run on it. Look, there's plenty of private capital sitting on the sidelines waiting to invest in essential government functions. If we allow the capital markets this opportunity to help fund through public-private partnerships, market demand will allow us to make the transitions to alternative energy, renewable energy. But I will tell you, we don't have the money, and we can't tax everybody enough to get that money. We've got to produce. We've got to engage the private markets. That's where the capital is. We need to put that to work for the betterment of the United States.
Yeah, and Stacy, we had Peter Morisi earlier on, economic guy, and he was saying, okay, it makes some sense, like if you need to put up plugs for electric vehicles, you know, across the country, that sort of thing. I don't want to take him out of exactly what he was saying, but he was saying some infrastructure could be contributed by the government, but not what they're proposing here.
Well, I mean, so we're also talking about the batteries. Last night on the program,
Yes.
we had an expansive discussion about lithium batteries and how they actually react with water. Instead of water putting a fire out that's created by lithium batteries, such as in the Tesla crash from over the weekend, you have this amazing, it's a scientific feat of brilliance that kids like to replicate in high school labs, which is lithium does not respond to water. The fire that's made by lithium doesn't respond. So the issue that we have here is we're talking about a whole separate fire truck. For every fire truck that we have that carries water, we would need fire trucks that carry the foam that puts out lithium battery fires. And that's only the beginning. When we talk about what these cars are made of and how they have to be taken care of and all the infrastructure that currently exists for fossil fuel powered vehicles, we're talking about replicating all of that for electric vehicles in the same scale because they want a complete transfer. That's not something the federal government can do. As you said, we're already broke and busted.
Right.
But more than there has to be a demand. I do not plan on buying an electric vehicle the next time we buy a car, which will be here in the next 12 months because we do have a new driver in the household. Buying an electric car because I like having the ability to drive 450 miles or whatever my gas tank will carry. I love that. I love being able to look down and know that I can drive this car for 3 or 4 hours or the length of half of an Audible book before I need to gas up again. And that's like our mission as we drive across the country. Sometimes we're like, hey, can we go 4.5 hours without stopping?
Yeah.
Let's see what this do. You can't do that with electric cars.
Okay.
So it's silly.
All right, we're going to take a break here. Panel, stand by. And also, it's called dark money, anonymous donors, a new report saying that these secretive groups are driving the efforts to pack the Supreme Court and some other legislation as well. We're going to be back with more of American Agenda after this.